Well, hello again, everybody. Thanks for enjoying the latest round of videos. I'm having a bit of an inspirational event, and I just enjoying making the videos in general. Now, yesterday I made the video about, is everybody in Ireland is most of the people in Ireland demonically possessed? And quite rightly, as many of you said, it's my country is the same way too. So we're all facing a similar kind of thing. Now, like some people are feeling despondent about it, like there's no hope for us. No, there's lots of hope for us. Never give up hope. And I'd like to read you this passage from The Lord of the Rings by J.R. Tolkien, which sums up how I feel about all this. And I'm going to explain a particular event that's coming. No, it's not going to be the UFOs. It's not going to be the coming of a god. It's going to be a demographic shift that presents us with enormous advantage. I'm talking about like people like us now in the tribes and people like us around the world who feel the same way and see the reality of this world as what it is. Now, this passage is when the Witch King of Angmar arrives at the gates of Minas Tirith to destroy the final city, and with that, the fall of man, the end of men. And he confronts Gandalf, and Gandalf walks up to meet him and says, "You cannot enter here," said Gandalf, and the huge shadow halted. "Go back to the abyss and prepare for you. Go back, fall into nothingness that awaits you, and your master go." The Black Rider flung back his hood, and behold, he had a kingly crown, and yet upon no head visible was it set. The red fire shone between it, and the mantle shoulders vast and dark. From a mouth unseen there came a deadly laughter. "O fool," he said, "old fool, this is my hour. Do you not know death when you see it? Die now and curse in vain." And with that he lifted high his sword, and flames ran down the blade. Gandalf did not move. And in that very moment, away behind in some courtyard of the city, a cock crowed. Shrill and clear he crowed, recking nothing of wizardry of war, welcoming only the morning in the sky, far above the shadows of death was coming with the dawn. And as if in answer, there came far away another note. Horns, horns, horns. In the dark Mindalulum's sides the dim echoed, great horns of the north wildly blowing. Rohan had come at last. Now, I don't have to explain the symbolism of that to you and why it's so important. Salvation didn't come in the form of a god. It didn't come in the form of, an entity or look. It came in the form of the riders of Rohan appearing above on the hills above Minas Tirith. And the Witch King of Angmar knew he was finished then, as did the orcs. It was an event that Gandalf had planned through his wizardry, and it was symbolized by something as simple as the cock crowing. Now, those of you Christians know the story of St. Peter, I think it is, will be familiar with the crowing of the cock and the symbolic nature of that, and the horns of Rohan. So what are the horns of Rohan for us, those of us who have sort of rejected things? I have a graph here I want to show you, and I want you to take a good look at this graph. I've created this graph to show where our rescue is going to come from. Now, the biggest problem we have had in society, especially since 2020, is the ascendancy of the midwit. Now, if you don't know what a midwit is a person who's not as intellectual as they think they are, but believe they are intellectual by following the status quo or by having cliches to undermine things like generalization. So when you have a generalization, the purpose of a generalization is not an absolute factual statement. It's to say, to show, it's a way of conveying complex information very quickly. So you might say something like, well, we had global warming in the past, but we didn't have SUVs when it happened in the, say, the warming in the Middle Ages and so on. Well, a midwit will turn around and say something like, well, there was a date in between 1164 and 1422 when the temperature dropped, as if to say that everything you said up until that point is gone, or they will insult you, or you get the laughing emoji. You'll get that kind of thing. During the Rona, when people were saying, I don't understand why we're having been locked down off this, the classic midwit thing was, and all the comment sites online was, are you a virologist? Are you a virologist? That was the midwit. The midwit has no knowledge of anything of any great depth. What it has is an arsenal of cliches and buzz phrases in order to appear intellectually superior and to discard generalizations. And generalizations are basically the story of the whole world. They will find one small detail and they will say that this detail undermines the wisdom or the effectiveness of the generalization, which generalizations again exist in order to convey complex information in a simple and direct form. Now, these were the midwit is, was the king of the world during the COVID lockdowns and all that stuff, and the whole trust the science was the midwits phrase. Now, I'll give you an example of famous midwits. A classic midwits in America was someone like that late night guy John Oliver, the English guy. Stephen Colbert with another midwit. People think they're clever, and they're clever, and they're really they're really with it because they have these smug kind of like witty rebuttals, which are just like basically just the establishment cliches issued in a different way. Now, I mean, if you want to, in Ireland here, a famous midwit would be Fintan O'Toole. He's a journalist with the Irish Times. Now, he's supposed to be some great intellectual thinker in Ireland. He's an absolute bimbo. If you look at his articles over the decades, you can basically take out climate change. They're basically boilerplates of globalist policy. So just take out Hillary Clinton replaced with Obama. Take out Obama replaced with Biden. Take out Putin replaced with Trump. Take out climate change replaced with immigration. And so on. They're the same thing over and over again with the globalist mandate interjected within and then sold off as being intellectual discourse. So he'd be a classic one in Ireland. There are whole boards, Ireland being a particularly insidious country in this regard. It's poisonously middle class too. Like there's groups like boards.ie, which is made of nothing but midwits, civil service midwits, and this is actually the decrease in traffic on that board is what really inspired me to make this video. Now, you could have a situation where you would have someone might say on a board, and had thing to do with like environmental policy regarding the building of houses, and that kind of infrastructure thing. They might say something like, well, it's kind of hard, to keep the meet supply and demand if we keep importing immigrants. And then the midwit will jump in and go, oh, that's the first time I've ever heard government mismanagement regarding housing blamed on people of color. Well done. I'm so clever. I'm so smug. Completely discarding the intelligent point made. And that will all be thumbed up by all the other midwits in the group. I remember during the Rona lockdowns, there was one particular insidious individual who was going around all the subforums. Boards.ie is like the Irish version of Reddit, but just for Ireland. Same kind of personality types. And someone had mentioned, well, maybe we'll get back to normal if we ever get out of this COVID police state. And he wrote underneath it, chortle, guffaw, laugh out loud, COVID police state. Jesus wept. And then even though we were living in a COVID police state, and then all the other midwits thumb it up, out of fear that they don't look as clever as this other midwit, this sort of leader of the midwits. And I followed this asshole, and he was all over. He was literally going through all the boards like a policeman, looking for, it could be a discussion about infrastructure, a discussion about art, a discussion about anything. And if somebody said, God, what's this lockdown all about? Why are we dealing with this? He'd come in and say, tinfoil hat, that way, or conspiracy theory forum, that way. That's a midwit, Now, funny enough, he doesn't post anymore. So, hopefully the gods have wiped his despicable cretinous ass off the face of the earth with the turbo cancers or the myocarditis. And that brings me to this chart. Now, I want you to look at this chart and behold and rejoice. Now, this chart explains how we're going to get out of this, and we're already well on the way. In the upper right-hand corner, you have the laughing, mocking emoji of the jabbed midwit. This would be up until 2021. They still exist, but since then, the red line is the rate of death. They're dying from the turbo cancers, the myocarditis. There's lots of them committing suicide from depression and stuff like that because they weren't as smart as they thought they were, and they're crashing down. Now, at the bottom right-hand corner, you have the unjabbed critical thinkers. The unjabbed critical thinkers who did not get jabbed, and these would be fallen directly into the antithesis of the midwit. The midwit is the working class who have street smarts, okay? And it's this interesting relationship between highly educated and intelligent people with PhDs who are truly intelligent and critical thinkers, and it's an alliance in society between them and the street smarts of the working class. And so you have the unjabbed critical thinkers who are made up of this people with street smarts who said, no way am I putting that in me. And then the very educated ones who looked at page 2 and 3, it was more important for them to look at pages 2 and 3 of Google and get real information like I did and many of us did, than to go on to comment sections on newspapers and prove how clever they were by making midwit mantras about, you think you're some kind of virologist, this kind of thing. Or, the journal.ie which is it's a government propaganda outlet in Ireland, was filled with them in the comment sections, and they were always made sure to get loads of thumbs up by the editors there, and were also put to the top comment. And it was policing with as well. Now they've all vanished. They're all gone. They're on to something else now. So that green line that we're continuing to live. And there's a point where the rate of death of the jabbed midwits and the survival rate of the unjabbed critical thinkers will reach what I'm calling the Midwit Extinction Terminator. Now, the Midwit Extinction Terminator is the point where the jabbed midwits have died in a sufficient number where they no longer have the sort of like the weight and the gravitas in social discourse that they had until that point. And then you will have a return to social and cultural sanity. But it will only happen we talk a lot about the NPC, and yet they're a problem. But the NPC is an order follower. The biggest problem we have are the midwits, the ones who reach the Irish Times, read The Guardian, read what in America they would listen to NPR. They're not as intelligent as they think they are. In fact, they're often very dumb. But because they can recite mantras or government press releases, or can agree with something they read in Vanity Fair or the New Yorker magazine, or they can, they think Donald Trump is an orange orangutan simpleton, because they have the ones who call us flag shaggers, but yet their social media is full of every flag on the world except the flag of the nation. They're all heading towards. They're all. I would say if you get them between the laughing emoji at the top and the midwit extinction terminator, I'd say they're about where right now, between rate of death to where the word of is. So like near the middle of the descending red line. And then they at that point they won't notice it, but we'll see changes in society where more intelligent discourse arrives, where more sort of rational. It's already kind of happening. You can already see it happening if you go to the comment sections. Like for instance, our midwit in chief Simon Harris was involved recently in a scandal regarding a young lad with severe scoliosis called Harvey, who died because his parents were unable to get help. While Harris, who was when he was health minister, said COVID-19 is means there was 18 previous strains of COVID before COVID-19. I mean, this guy, and yet he walks around, as do all the other Irish midwits who are in the Irish politics at the moment, all walk around like they're great statesmen and the moral, the moral vanguards and stewards of the world, not just of the world, and Simon Harris is like an autistic simpleton child who's waiting for his mammy to pin his new crayon drawing onto the fridge and go, "Aren't you wonderful, Simon?" And that's what in his case, the autistic simpleton is waiting for the pat on the head and the drawing to be pinned to the fridge by the globalists. But it's still the same thing. Little pat on the head. Teachers' pets are often midwits. Teachers' pets are nearly always midwits. And that's what you'd have in the midwit in Ireland. A huge element of the teacher's pet midwit. So when they reach the extinction terminator, we have the point between an insane world and a sane world, as they can no longer sustain themselves and are dying of their cancers, their turbo cancers, at an enormous rate. Now, this is why I'm not against the latest round of boosters, because the latest round of boosters will move that also further along the red line towards the crossover point. So don't get in the way of, what they always say, never get in the way of your enemy making a mistake. And then we will have a return to social sanity. So look at this graph and listen to what I'm saying, okay? The ones who've made our lives miserable have been the midwits. The midwits are the vanguards of the establishment who locked us down, flooded our countries with mass immigration, killed Harvey Thompson, I think the lad's name was. Now, also, when Simon Harris, a typical midwit tactic is, when they're losing, is they try to elicit sympathy. Like, they try to get people to feel sorry for them. And that's what happened, Harris. Or they try to fool people at first with this. If they can't do a smug laugh thing, they'll do something like try to win popular favor. Now, when after that young lad Harvey died, and there was righteous anger, which still exists in this country at the moment, what he did was show up at the Oasis concert in Dublin in a PR event with the Oasis cap, the caps on those caps on his head, thinking he would win the sheeple back. It didn't work. So his next one is he's now saying the far right, their imaginary far right. The far right is basically the bogeyman, the imaginary bogeyman of the midwit, and saying that they threatened his family. It's all lies. He's a liar. It's not true. He's pulled this one out of the bag before, and no proof was offered because there is none, and he would lie if there was any anyway. That's his fallback plan. That's his midwit fallback plan. The midwit who buys the biggest house in the suburbs, shows off his neighbours his new deck, a house all kitted out with all the flash furniture. Then something happens, an economic downturn, and then he wants everyone to feel sorry for him. Well, he was laughing at the guy down the road who lived in a shitty shack and didn't go out and spend all his money in designer furniture. And then he'll want sympathy from the person he mocked. And this is what the midwit is like. When the midwit is destroyed and wiped off the face of the earth, like the Witch King of Agmar and the Dark Riders, they return to the abyss. The abyss is nothing. That's what the abyss is. The abyss is a place of nothing, okay? Nothingness, because they're human embodiments of the abyss. They are the abyss made manifest in the form of humans, of Homo sapiens. They return to the abyss, nothingness, oblivion. There's no reincarnation for them. There's nothing. This is why they all pretend to be like atheists until something goes wrong, and then the last refuge of scoundrel is prayer. So remember this: the Midwit Extinction Terminator is rapidly coming, because now I'll give you an example of something how it happened in real life. In the 2016, one of the most remarkable events, and I believe it was a supernatural event, it was intervention of kinds, whereas Hillary Clinton was winning the U.S. election like this, and Donald Trump was coming down. She started depleting, and at 3:30 a.m. in the morning, I'll never forget this. Donald Trump started winning, and she started to go into the abyss. And it was one of the most pivotal points in history, because there was a I'm not saying Trump was chosen by God. Remember, it's the ordinary people voting in America going, I want my country back. I don't want woke. I don't want taking the knee. I don't want all this. I want my country back. Oh, I don't want woke. I want what the America I grew up in. The same thing will happen in Ireland. Our 3:30 a.m. moment, and your country, Britain, is the Midwit Extinction Terminator. When they all when they all start dying at such an exponential rate from the needlecraft, that the ones who didn't take the needlecraft, the street smart working classes, and the highly educated critical thinkers with PhDs overtake them, and we return to social and cultural sanity. And that's what will happen. Now, of course, the midwit response to this would be, well, I know loads of people who got turbo cancers and they were not jabbed. Remember, the midwit is is basically the dodo, and when the midwit is the dodo, sanity returns. So take care of yourselves.